Welcome back to the CLASP Podcast series, where we spotlight the powerful intersection of climate action and philanthropy in the Caribbean and beyond. I'm your host, Derval Barzey. Today's episode centers on a powerful story of resilience and leadership. As we all witnessed, Hurricane Beryl left a trail of destruction across our region. But amidst the chaos, organizations like the Last Good Chin Foundation sprang into action, delivering not only emergency relief, but building long-term recovery and entrepreneurship support in communities that needed it most. We are honored to be joined by Professor Rosalea Hamilton, a powerhouse of vision and purpose. She serves as the chair of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance, CariPhil, and CEO of the Last Good Chin Foundation. Her leadership in both roles uniquely positions her at the heart of Caribbean climate philanthropy and innovation. Today we'll get into CariPhil's expanding climate mission, Last Good Chin Foundation's post-Beryl response, and how climate-aligned entrepreneurship is shaping the future of Caribbean resilience. So let's get into it. Professor Hamilton, as chair of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance, how would you describe the value that CLASP brings to our region and the importance of Caribbean-led philanthropy at this moment?
Hi, Derval. I am so pleased to be here because this CLASP initiative is vital at this moment. It's the effort of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance to unite funders and other stakeholders to commit to climate action. We have to go beyond talking now. We have to make real commitment, drive innovation solutions, and be creative in finding solutions to our problems, and of course, to build the kind of resilience that will help us to cope with the climate crisis that we have on our hands. It's very, very important at this point because we're at this kind of pivotal moment in the world where small island states are not just facing the existential climate crisis, but we also have this seismic change that's taking place in the global economy. There's a lot of uncertainty. So it's a kind of double-edged sword for us because we know and we're living with a climate crisis, but we have this other kind of global economic changes that are taking place, and so we have to build resilience. So CLASP is happening at a great time, and we hope that as we roll out this effort, we can unite funders and stakeholders and make a real commitment to climate action.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, we are facing multiple crises in this region: environmental, economic, geopolitical. We really have to dig deep, as you said, to be creative in how we find solutions, how we boost our resilience, and how we continue to not only survive, but thrive as a region.
And CariPhil knows exactly what this takes, because from our inception, we started with a very ambitious agenda to plant 1 million trees across the Caribbean. And so we started very early, within months of setting up our foundation, with this Caribbean tree planting project. And by early February, we're in the throes, 2020, we're in the throes of a global pandemic. And, we had by this time built up alliances across the Caribbean and, really began rolling this thing out. And so we paused, of course, as the world did, but we felt we had to keep going because this climate crisis is not a new thing. It's going to happen even with a pandemic. And so we kept going, and we were so pleased by 2021, by the middle of 2021, we had planted over 1.5 million trees. And we engaged 22 countries. In fact, our thinking at the time is we'll engage at least 14 or 15 countries. We did 22 countries and territories in the Caribbean. We made over 350 partners and involved nearly 5,000 young people across the Caribbean. It was a major achievement, and it really told us that if we collaborate, if we are purposeful, if we work together, we can more than achieve these very ambitious agendas.
Yes, and thank you for sharing those incredible stats. Over 1.5 million trees, 22 territories, and over 350 partners. CariPhil has definitely been moving beyond just talk, but into the realm of meaningful action. And CLASP is just another example of the critical work that CariPhil has been leading in the region to build resilience and really drive change on the ground. But I want to talk a little bit about the other hat that you wear with Lascochin Foundation. The Lascochin Foundation works to ensure our children thrive and entrepreneurship succeed. That's your stated objective or mission. But when Hurricane Beryl happened, and it broke many records in our region during the 2024 hurricane season, the Lascochin Foundation played a pivotal role in recovery efforts. So please tell us a bit about the actions that were taken on the ground in Jamaica and how it extended to climate-aligned entrepreneurship.
Yes, well, I must say that, Hurricane Beryl was a wake-up call for many of us here in Jamaica. And for listeners who may not remember what happened, we're talking about the earliest Category 4 hurricane ever recorded. In fact, it broke our earlier record for Hurricane Dennis, I think, in about 2005. And so it was really the strongest and fastest tropical storm to move very quickly into Category 5 hurricane, very, very quickly. And so we observed this thing coming. It hit Jamaica early July 3rd, I think it was, last year, and wreaked havoc. We're talking about more than 200,000 people directly impacted. We had over nearly 300 roads, I think, affected, fallen trees, flooding, all this kind of stuff. The agricultural sector took a huge hit, about $30 million worth of damage estimated at the time. And, we felt we had to step up to the plate. So as a foundation, the Lascochin Foundation, we've been thinking about how to position ourselves. In fact, COVID gave us a little practice in terms of immediate relief through care packaging. And so we had that experience of moving very quickly to provide support for people who were affected in these kinds of disasters. And so we knew we could do that, and we knew we could also rely on partners to collaborate with us in providing immediate relief. So we thought we wanted to do more, and Hurricane Beryl gave us this opportunity to pilot this idea of a kind of community-based climate support program that targeted the corner shops and the small shops and the cook shops that were devastated. We thought that's important because, many of these cook shops and corner shops are the lifeline for communities in terms of food and all the necessities that they need, right? And so when it happened, we went into the parishes, two parishes that were most severely impacted. This is Clarendon and St. Elizabeth. And we decided we'd roll out a phased program of assistance. So the first phase was, of course, the rapid relief, and we added on to that assessment. And that was, again, fairly easy for us to do because we know what it takes to move very quickly to provide relief. And within 1 week, with our partners, and here we partnered with JWN Foundation, the Sandals Foundations, and with them, together with them, we were able to provide over 1,000 relief care packages within the first week, impacting and benefiting about 4,000 people in about 4 parishes. That was just the first week. So we did that again. We had that experience. We had the partnership. We didn't do it alone, and we were able to move very quickly, providing relief. We thought it was important, however, to properly assess the damage. And this is where we kind of went out on the limb and said, can we get some data about who's been affected, where, how badly, and so on. And believe it or not, our partners, one of the partners that we collaborated with is Operation Save Jamaica, and they work with a group of churches here in Jamaica. And they reached out to the New Testament Church of God. And believe it or not, with pastors, we were able to collect data, going shop to shop, home to home, to get the information about damage and loss and so on. So we're able to do a very crude, rapid assessment of the loss and damage. And that helped us in our second phase, because that second phase, we thought we would restore and rebuild these small businesses in particular, because we felt that if they were up and running, especially these cook shops, and then, they can provide food. And so through the data, we recognized that a lot of support was needed to restock the supplies of these businesses that were wiped out, to provide repair materials for them, also, of course, financial assistance. And that enabled us now to move in the second phase in that very targeted approach. Fortunately for us at the time, we had a professional from the UNFPA who was here, Mary Oliello, and she is an emergency response specialist in GBVIE. And so she joined us actually to provide gender-sensitive interventions at the time, just trying to understand what was happening with women and women-owned business owners, to just get a feel for what's happening. And that also helped us to very quickly shape a kind of gender-sensitive training program in our collaboration with our main entrepreneurship partner, the Institute of Law and Economics. And that enabled us to reach out, provide that kind of training to about 20 young males and female entrepreneurs. And we were able to provide nearly $10,000 worth of assistance, in kind and cash support to them, in addition to the packages and so on that we were able to provide. And then in the third phase, we moved on to monitoring and evaluating the development. One of the things we found out is that just last month, we found that 33% of those who we surveyed still were not back up and running. And so we have reached out and provide ongoing support to them with respect to the kinds of information that they need. And we moved on to other kinds of emergencies that took place. But over the period of these three phases, we were able to collect data and provide very targeted support, and we felt that it really made a difference to the lives and livelihoods of the people who were negatively impacted by the hurricane.
Yes, and when we speak about climate action and climate resilience, what is critical is providing support on the ground and addressing the tangible needs of communities, which the Lascaux Chin Foundation and CariPhil have been doing. And I also like that you mentioned gender-sensitive interventions, since we know that climate change is not gender neutral, and depending on gender as well as economic status, vulnerability to climate impact intensifies. You mentioned strategic partnership. CLASP has a very strong focus on partnerships. In your view, how can Caribbean Philanthropy deepen its collaboration both regionally and globally?
It's so important, the philanthropy. One of the things I should mention is that in providing the kind of gender-sensitive interventions, we also found partners who were targeting support to these women business owners. One in the diaspora as well. One of those partners was the Bling Sky Foundation, and they provided significant support not only to individuals impacted but women entrepreneurs. And so finding partners who can provide these kinds of strategic support is critical. And I would say for us in the Caribbean, it has to start with us getting to know each other. Just talking to each other, knowing of each other in a more intimate way, because we know of the organizations, we sometimes know the leaders and so on, but we often don't sit down and dialogue about the specific things we're doing and how we can forge collaboration and partnerships. And, the Alaska Chin Foundation did that recently this year because we felt that in the event of another disaster, we want to find new partners who can work with us, and they also need to know what we're doing. And so we found that we talked to organizations who we knew, we've actually, some of them we've worked with already, but we didn't know the details of what they actually did. So I would say to Caribbean philanthropic organizations, begin talking to each other nationally, get to know each other, get to understand the shared goals and objectives, and forge these partnerships. It is when you do things together that the collaboration and the partnerships emerge. And you definitely need them in times of disaster. We were able to turn to our partners very quickly. We don't have to ask too much question because we know exactly how we work together because we've been doing it for some time. And I also think we need to start to talk to each other regionally. And this is where the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance can help, because we have regular ongoing dialogue with philanthropic organizations across the region. So I urge listeners to become members of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance and also to be part of our regular engagement with especially young people and organizations across the region. And we can also provide that connection to global philanthropic organizations. It is when we come together, we're small, we have to constantly remind ourselves that we're small. In Jamaica, we say we're little but we're talawa, and that means that although we're small, we can do a lot, and we can work together, and we can become larger than life, right? And so I think that's what we have to do. Collaborate, work together, and engage these global organizations as a group. And the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance is positioning ourselves to really represent, work with, collaborate with smaller NGOs, philanthropic organizations that are not able to do the kinds of things that we can do across the region and with our global partners.
Yes, there's a saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. So we definitely appeal to funders, organizations, foundations to get on board with CariPhil so that we can indeed go further.
Quite so.
So, Rosalea, on the first episode of this series, the introductory episode, Erica Miller from Wings, the lead for Philanthropy for Climate Global Movement, spoke about the 7-pillar framework. And she highlighted the flexibility that this framework offers to foundations for them to assess and enhance their climate journey. So in a few weeks, CLASP will be conducting technical assistance workshops for foundations to get on board. But I know that you have already started to use the 7-pillar framework to assess your climate journey. What has been your experience so far applying the 7-pillar framework?
This 7-pillar framework is a great framework to really begin to understand the elements that's required to really make a difference in this climate journey, building resilience and taking climate action. If we think about Pillar 1, the education and learning, so important. Our organizations, we've been to workshops on climate change and so on, and you learn things, but the actual learning by doing is really, really important. So I don't start with the idea that you have to know it all and get it right, because I can tell you when we rolled out this program during Hurricane Beryl, we were learning a lot of things. We tried some new things. We tried, for example, using technology, and we found that, wow, in spite of the best technologies, if we don't have the Wi-Fi access, then, those are some limitations. So we understand we had to find an offline kind of methodology to collect the data, etc. So we learn as you go. And so we are really building the kind of momentum to that's required to really master this area of how philanthropy makes a difference in the context of a climate disaster. Certainly with respect to the commitment of resources, I think we're showing important leadership there. And I want to say that leadership does matter. In our initiative during Hurricane Beryl, it was driven at the highest level of our organization. Our chairman James Rawls, he led this in many important ways, because when we found that we were in difficulties trying to roll out some parts of this intervention, he literally brought on the company and said, guys, you have to help the Laskochin Foundation, and they opened up space for us in the company operation. Phenomenal. Because you're talking about a company that's running 24/7, right? It's a large company here in Jamaica, and yet with the leadership of our chairman, he was able to create space for us to get the kind of help we needed to package the materials and to get it physically out into the communities when we had some challenges that we couldn't overcome. So leadership matters. Our chairman is also the executive chairman of the LASCO affiliated group of companies. So he's very busy, but he found the time because he thought this is so important. So leadership matters, the commitment of the resources matter, and we had that commitment at the highest level. The Pillar 5 speaks to operation, and Pillar 3 speaks to integration, integrating these activities into not just our work here in the foundation, but in a corporate company. It was also quite phenomenal. We've had that experience. We're ready to go in another climate disaster, and again, with the leadership of our chairman. Influencing and advocacy is important, and I think through this experience, we have been talking to a lot of our colleagues, to organizations, individuals who really find what we did very intriguing and want to repeat and do something similar, in the next disaster. And so our advocacy for this kind of work among our peers is something that I think we're showing real leadership in. And of course, with respect to transparency, very important, we got support from all over the world online, especially coming out of the US in our Jamaican diaspora community. And so the transparency in terms of the money spent is also very important. And so we provided a whole presentation of what we did, what the initiative was about, and we shared that online to the partners directly, etc. And that was important. So these pillars really help us to think through what we do, and we certainly want to urge other funders to join this movement, to join this CLASP movement, to really make this commitment and make it real.
Thank you for sharing how the 7-pillar framework has supported and continues to support you in improving your impact, particularly in the areas of leadership, advocacy, and transparency. Over 800 funders have already signed on to the International Philanthropy Commitment on Climate Change. CariPhil will be working with foundations across the region to refine the funders' commitment so that it matches the Caribbean's realities. So from your vantage point, what's your call to action for funders, organizations, and listeners tuning in today?
Join the movement. Join this global movement of funders from more than 23 countries across the world. We want Caribbean funders to commit to taking the urgent action on this climate crisis that we face. This is an existential crisis for us. The Laskochin Foundation will sign this commitment. We want to encourage all funders to join us. We're creating a moment and an occasion in which we can do this together, and we want to build a regional commitment to making this collaboration significant. Our voices, our work, our presence must be in this global movement because, as we all know, this climate crisis is real. It's not coming, it's here. It's not impacting us, it's devastating us. And so we want all of the funders, all philanthropists, big and small, to let's collaborate, let's do it, let's act now, let's make it happen.
Thank you, Rosalea, for your passion and leadership. From CariPhil's advocacy to Last Kitchen Foundation's hands-on relief work, you've shown us what it means to lead with purpose.
Thank you so much.
To our listeners, whether you're a funder, policymaker, or concerned Caribbean citizen, there is a role for you in this movement. Visit CariPhilAlliance.org and lascofoundation.org to learn more. Subscribe to the Climate Conscious Podcast and stay tuned for the next episode in our CLASP Podcast series. Until next time, keep forging forward for climate, for community, and for the Caribbean. Thank you.